So on behalf of Pakistani Canadian Press Club, PCPC, what we call it, I welcome Honorable Tim Uppal, Canada's State Minister for Multiculturalism, in our meetup event. Minister Tim Uppal was elected as a Member of Parliament for Edmonton, Sherwood Park in the 2008 federal election. He represents the Conservative Party of Canada. He was an executive producer and host of a radio show on CKER in Edmonton. Honorable Minister, it's an honor for me to introduce members of Pakistani Canadian Press Club. Mr. Asif Javed, he's a columnist, writes for Young Canada and other newspapers. Mr. Ran Sohail, he's an editor of Khabarnama newspaper, very accomplished journalist from Pakistan. Ms. Aruj, she does radio show for Radio AM 530 and Radio AM 1430, as well as she's TV anchor. Halima Sadia, she does talk show for this Tag TV, as well as she's a photojournalist. Hamid Bashani is an accomplished writer, and Hamid Bashani writes for Pakistan Post and also writes for other newspapers. Mr. Tariq Chaudhry, he's working on building a great news agency serving the purpose in terms of bridging Pakistan and Canada. Mr. Nadeem Ansari is an editor of Urdu Post. Mr. Asfar Tahir, he's a TV anchor, and he happened to do TV shows for TV1. Now we have requested him to do TV show for our TV. Okay. And Mr. Latafat Ali Siddiqui is a very veteran journalist. As I said earlier, he serves for Voice of America as well as Dawn. He has his own weekly newspaper, English language newspaper from Toronto. Mr. Ashfaq Hussain is a very accomplished writer, and he has written numerous books on literature, and he's a very respectful member of Pakistani community. I welcome Mr. Amir Arai. He's a really blunt journalist. What we all see here in Canada, we call that he is real, he's doing real journalism in Canada. Thank you, Amir, joining us. Azfar is editor of Pakistan Post Toronto, and we are very lucky today. We have Pakistan Post CEO, Mr. Afaq Ali. He is real journalist. Very good. Honestly, and Afaq bhai, thank you very much for joining us. And I mean, if I tell you about Afaq's contribution to Pakistani journalism, not here in Canada, not in the US, he lives in New York, and he traveled all the way from New York to join us. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to request Minister, our agenda is very simple. As I said, Minister Tim Uppal is not just a minister only, he's an accomplished journalist as well. We also like to know, Minister, what would be the salient features of multiculturalism if your Conservative Party gets elected again in next elections, and also particularly how your government would help Pakistani community to patronage their cultural heritage.
Very good, thank you. First of all, thank you all for being here. I think the the importance of cultural media in Canada it's very important, and has become more and more important in the last number of years. Bridging that gap between what people make of the country they might have immigrated from or have family there, and also covering stories here in Canada. I know many of you focus very much on what's happening in Canada, but from a different perspective than maybe the mainstream media does. So that's all very important, and it's a great opportunity for me to speak to you and answer some of your questions. Multiculturalism under the Conservative government, I think, is very different than what has happened in the past. In the past, multiculturalism really meant, give some group some money and say, here, go do your singing, your dancing, your bhangra, but don't bother us. What we've done is to take a little bit differently, because most communities now in Canada, they're at the point where they can fund their own cultural dances and their songs and all that kind of stuff. What we should be doing is looking at ways to say, okay, how could we have communities interact more with each other? How could we open doors to each other's communities? How can we learn more about other communities? So we are now focusing multiculturalism on that, on interaction, on integration, on allowing communities to get to know each other, get to know your neighbors better. So we fund programs that allow communities to say, okay, if you're going to do a cultural program, then bring other communities onto the same stage. Or if you're going to do your culture program, have it in a way that other communities can learn more about you, or you can learn more about other communities. This is a way that we as Canadians will learn more about each other, because we all live under the same laws, we all have the same values, but but still being able to respect and cherish our heritage that we have. So for myself, I'm as Canadian as they come, born here, played hockey, football when I grew up, but at the same time, I could on a Saturday play ice hockey, but on Sunday, when I was a kid, we were doing bhangra. So that's just how I grew up. That's very Canadian, and that's how I think, and that's how my kids are growing up now. And so I think that's the way that Canadians expect us to move multiculturalism along, and I think that's an important way to have a strong, cohesive society.
Wonderful. So we all know about Canada's official multicultural policy, and as Minister briefed, it's just a fusion of different cultures. And so particularly regarding our own Pakistani diaspora, any question comes to the mind. And our also purpose to meet Minister today is how we, as Pakistani Canadian, how can we build better relation between Pakistan and Canada as well. So these are the things we are here to discuss with the Minister. So I would request Latafat Ali Siddiqui to start.
Mr. Minister, I have a brief question, and that is that there is a perception that this time Liberal Party will make it, but this is someone else's perception. But what is your opinion? What are your expectations? Are you hoping to have another majority government or minority government, and what are your parties having prospects in the coming elections?
Okay, thank you. I'm somebody that, part of my ministry, I get to travel right across the country, meet with many people of different backgrounds all over the country. And in talking to Canadians, I'm very confident that this Harper government will be re-elected in a majority government. What Canadians are looking for is leadership on economic situations, especially in a time when we are going into, call it a questionable, especially on the world level, kind of an unstable economic situation. And we need leadership on that. And internationally as well, security issues internationally. People that I'm talking to right across the country are looking to Prime Minister Harper to be that leader, and I'm very confident that we will come back with a majority government. I know there's polling that goes up and down, but if you looked at the latest polls, things are starting to look in that direction, but I don't really like to put too much trust into polls. I trust people more than polls.
Thank you.
Minister, my question is this, with regard to your 4 years government of the PC party. Is there anything important which your government did for the Pakistani culture, and promotion of Pakistani culture over here? Anything important which your government did?
I think what we've done, I myself, I have made 3 trips to Pakistan and have been able to highlight some of those here as a Minister of State for Multiculturalism. My last one was in January, so a year ago, where I went to Lahore and was able to meet a number of people there, meet with the politicians as well, ministers, in order to see how we could increase or improve our relationship between the two countries. And I think one of the keys to that is definitely the diaspora, those Pakistanis of Pakistani heritage that are living in Canada. They've, so many of them have been here for so many years, have contributed so much to Canadian society, not only in a cultural way, but economically as well. And when we look at international trades, like when we first came into government, there was only 3 or 4 international deals that the government of Canada had with, so free trade agreements. We are now looking at over 40, because we believe that it's important that we have a strong trading relationship around the world. And part of that is to use that people-to-people relationship, because people who live here who have a connection to another country, and we're talking about Pakistan, you know how to do business there, you know the people there, and you should and you were able to inform the government and to be able to say, okay, this is how we can move forward with these type of things. So I think what's important though is for us to be able to build that relationship with people here and in Pakistan as well. There's some certain issues in Pakistan that we have to deal with in terms of security and others issues of companies that want to invest there. I've heard from companies that they have concerns, and I think if we can address those concerns, there is a possibility there as well. Pakistan itself is a strong, call it a partner for Canada, especially in international security issues. And so, we look to make sure that we have a good relationship with them. Here locally, we have, through multiculturalism, I know we funded some programs. We have a number of great organizations right across the country that are really promoting, Pakistan culture, and folks like you with the media as well, where you're able to bring that information, the culture, and other things to Canadians. So I think all of that, it's like little pieces that we try to ensure that we're able to make sure that Canadians are able to keep, stay proud and be proud of their culture, but also, be able to live together. And that's a big part of everything that we're doing under multiculturalism.
But my question is this, Mr. Minister. I didn't see in the Mississauga, which is a city of a thick population of Pakistani community, I didn't see any particular function or festival or cultural festival which is supported by the government of Canada. Can you explain anything about it, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you could tell me that if there was a Pakistani organization that fits under a multiculturalism grant, and if they have applied, then I'd be able to look at that. But what we don't do as a government is to fund individual cultural programs, right? And that's for all communities, not just the Pakistan community. I mean, other programs as well. Communities do put on programs, cultural programs, and if they apply for funding for like the interactions program under multiculturalism, I'd be happy to work with that community group to help them receive some funding to help the financial support is helpful, right? It helps them make sure that the program is successful and on a financial side of things, and we'd be happy to work with any community to see if they can be approved for the funding.
Last question, Hamid Bashir.
Yeah, Mr. Minister, I would like to ask very important question in the current situation. We all know that France is going through a very difficult time in terms of multiculturalism. So I would ask only for the reaction. What happened in France we all know, but what was the reaction specifically in Pakistan, because we are talking about Pakistan. From Prime Minister to President and from Parliament to the layman, everybody almost demonstrated against government of France and their policies toward this issue. We had more than 25 members of parliaments demonstrating in front of the parliament in Pakistan, condemning the freedom of expression in Europe and in France. So how would, and at the same time, what happened, the world showed solidarity with the French people and with their constitution, with the freedom of expression. Many of them, they traveled, but Canada didn't send any high-profile person to participate in that demonstration.
I think our Minister
So
of
what
Public
do you
Safety was
think,
there.
how do you think that how you can bring Pakistan on board with your cultural policies, economic policies, trade policies, and at the same time you deal with the issues like this which are out of date and against the values and morals and universally accepted values we all work for? How would you bring them on board?
As for Paris, our Minister Stephen Blaney was there, the Minister of Public Safety, and he laid flowers at the site at the newspaper on behalf of Canadians, so he was there. I think this is the thing. We as Canadians and as Canadian government, we will do and take steps for what we think is right for Canada. And we would hope that other countries see that as being, as being honest and say and agree with what we would consider our Canadian values. In this issue of what is, I guess the idea comes down to drawings of religious leaders, religious prophets, and others as well. And these people didn't just draw characters of only one religion, but others as well. I would say this in Canada, that yes, there's freedom of expression. And if we, if somebody doesn't like something, I think here in Canada, you have every right to protest it. You have every right to ban it or to maybe organize some type of boycott of it and ask businesses not to advertise there. There's a lot of things that you can do that don't involve violence. And I think that's the difference between what I think people are showing solidarity for is the freedom of expression on, yes, freedom of expression of writing something, but if you don't like it, you have the freedom of expression to express yourself and say, I don't like that. That's not something that agrees with my values or my personal religion, so I am going to boycott it. I'm going to speak out against it. I'm going to, do whatever, organize against it, have some kind of strike. That's all within Canadian laws and Canadian values to be able to express yourself. So I think that freedom of expression goes for both sides, as long as there's no violence involved. And as soon as Canadian laws are broken, I mean, violence is, laws around the world, that's where we have a problem. But I think here in Canada, we can embrace the idea of freedom of expression without having that type of violence.
Thank you very much,
Pakistan has a blasphemy law
Yes.
in place. And what they are trying to do, they are trying to promote and impose that blasphemy law on the West. That is the simple translation of their struggle.
Mm-hmm.
So how Canada see at that? How they face this situation? Is there any official statement against the government activities which they are not supposed to be promoting such kind of things?
Absolutely. The Government of Canada has, in the House of Commons and through other means, through our foreign affairs ministers and others, we've been very vocal against the blasphemy law. We think that it's something that should be repealed. It's something that's can be abused and has been abused. When I was there just a year ago, had met with the law minister and others to also say that we do not support this and we would like to see the blasphemy law gone. And if it can't be repealed, then there needs to be steps put in place to make sure that it's not being abused, because that is something that has been seen and has been getting international reaction. So when I say that there's concerns, certain issues with Pakistan that we need to be dealt with, that would be one of them.
Thank you very much, Minister. On behalf of Pakistani Canadian Press Clubs, we are very grateful for your participation today and with our meetup event. Thank you very much.
Very much. Thank you
you.
very much. Thank you, Tahir, for arranging this.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.